The massacre that changed Egypt forever. Imagine receiving a personal invitation from the most powerful man in Egypt, a grand military celebration. An event filled with honor, prestige, and political importance. The ruler himself wants you there. You arrive dressed in your finest clothes. Your horse is decorated. Your guards accompany you. Around you are Egypt's most powerful military commanders, noblemen, and leaders. You pass through the gates of a massive fortress overlooking Cairo. The gates close behind you minutes later. Hundreds of men are dead. This is the story of the Citadel Massacre of 1811, one of the most ruthless political purges in history, and the event that allowed Muhammad Ali Pasha to seize complete control of Egypt. And to understand why it happened, we need to go back to the beginning of the 19th century. At the time, Egypt was officially part of the Ottoman Empire, but real power inside the country was complicated. For centuries, Egypt had been dominated by a military elite known as the Mamluks. The Mamluks had originally arrived as slave soldiers hundreds of years earlier. Over time, they became rulers, generals, landowners, and kingmakers. Even when the Ottoman Empire conquered Egypt in 1517, the Mamluks never truly disappeared. They remained wealthy, they remained powerful, and they remained dangerous. Then came a man named Muhammad Ali, born in what is now modern-day Greece. Muhammad Ali was an Albanian officer serving in the Ottoman military. And he arrived in Egypt during the chaos that followed Napoleon's invasion in 1798. Egypt was in turmoil. The French had invaded. The Ottomans wanted control restored. The British were interfering. Local factions were fighting for power. It was a political battlefield. Muhammad Ali proved to be smarter than all of them. Over several years, he built alliances, manipulated rivals, gained the support of religious leaders, and gradually positioned himself as the strongest man in Egypt. By 1805, he became governor of Egypt, but there was one major obstacle standing in his way. The Mamluks, they still controlled vast estates, they still commanded loyal followers, and many Egyptians viewed them as a legitimate source of authority. And as long as the Mamluks existed, Muhammad Ali's position was never secure. He understood something many rulers throughout history have understood. You cannot share power forever. Eventually, one side has to win. Muhammad Ali decided that side would be his. For years, tensions grew. Sometimes the Mamluks cooperated with him, sometimes they opposed him, but neither side truly trusted the other. Then, in 1811, an opportunity appeared. The Ottoman Empire was fighting a rebellion in Arabia. Muhammad Ali's son, Tusun Pasha, was preparing to lead a military campaign against the rebels. A grand departure ceremony was organized at the Cairo Citadel. The Citadel was one of the most impressive fortresses in the Middle East. And built centuries earlier by Saladin, it towered above Cairo and served as the center of political power in Egypt. Invitations were sent, military officers were invited, government officials were invited, and most importantly, the leading Mamluk emirs were invited. The event appeared completely normal. In fact, refusing the invitation would have looked suspicious. The Mamluks accepted on March 1st, 1811. They gathered inside the citadel. Hundreds of them arrived. The atmosphere was festive. Ceremonial guards lined the roads. Officials exchanged greetings. Crowds gathered to watch the celebration. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary. Then the procession began. The Mamluk leaders mounted their horses and followed the route through the fortress. And the path wound through a narrow passage surrounded by high stone walls. It was steep, it was confined, and there was only one way out. As the Mamluks rode deeper into the passage, the gates behind them suddenly slammed shut. The men looked around in confusion. Then came the gunfire. Shots erupted from above. Hidden soldiers positioned on rooftops, walls, and fortified positions opened fire directly into the trapped procession. Panic exploded instantly. Horses reared. Men fell from their saddles. The narrow road became a killing zone. Some Mamluks attempted to charge forward. Others tried to retreat. Neither was possible. The exits were blocked. The walls were too high. Bullets rained down from every direction. And those who survived the initial volleys were cut down by soldiers waiting below. The ambush was devastating. Years of planning had been compressed into a few minutes of violence. One by one, Egypt's most powerful Mamluk leaders were killed. According to a famous legend, a single Mamluk warrior escaped. The story claims that he rode his horse toward the edge of the citadel and leaped from the walls. The drop was enormous. Miraculously, he survived and escaped. Whether the story is completely true remains debated by historians. What is certain is that very few escaped. The massacre was an overwhelming success for Muhammad Ali, but he wasn't finished. established. As news spread across Egypt, additional orders were issued, Mamluk leaders outside Cairo were hunted down. And their supporters were targeted, their properties were seized. Some fled south into Sudan, others disappeared into exile. The centuries-old Mamluk political system collapsed almost overnight. A power structure that had survived invasions, dynasties, and empires was destroyed in a single day. Muhammad Ali now stood alone at the top, with no serious internal rivals remaining. He began transforming Egypt. He reorganized the military. He built factories. He expanded agriculture. He modernized administration. He established schools. He sent students to Europe to study science, engineering, and military tactics. Many historians consider him the founder of modern Egypt. His reforms would shape the country's future for generations. Yet the foundation of his power rested on one of the most brutal acts of political deception in Egyptian history. The men who entered the citadel that morning believed they were attending a celebration. They expected speeches, they expected ceremonies, they expected honor. Instead, they rode directly into a trap, a carefully planned ambush hidden behind an invitation. And in the space of a few terrifying minutes, centuries of Mamluk power came to an end. The citadel still stands today above Cairo. Millions of people visit it every year. They admire the architecture, they enjoy the view. They walk through the same fortress where history changed forever. But beneath its stone walls lies the memory of a single day in 1811, a day when Muhammad Ali secured his future. And a day when Egypt's old rulers were wiped out, and a day that proved one of history's harshest lessons. Sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't an army, it's an invitation.